The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors. It's coming.
All these voices. All these voices. All these things you can't explain. All these painful memories. They keep haunting you and daunting me. It's just a ghost of you and me. It's just a smoking gasoline. It's just a ghost of you and me. Of you and me. All these whispers.
My name is James Hershey. Right back.
All these shadows in my mind. But my reflection I can't find. It's just a ghost of you and me. It's just a smoking gasoline. It's just a
That ought
ghost
to do
of
it.
you and me. Of you and me. Don't let 'em take you away. Don't let 'em bring you down inside. It's just the mirrors in your mind. Don't let 'em bring you down.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr. And with me as always is my co-host, Old Boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing? Misfits, Sugar Ladies, and Demon Hunter.
This week I came across an article that really caught my attention that I wanted to talk about on the show. It's out of Brownwood, Texas. So what I'm going to do starting this off is I'm just going to go ahead and read you the article. That way you know exactly what we're dealing with here. And then we'll discuss it and some of the things that we think it might be and all that. So the headline is, "The malicious spirits at Lake Brownwood will try to drown you slowly." In Brownwood, Texas, Flat Rock Park is the place to be. Every summer, families flock to the park to enjoy recreational sports, the beautiful scenery, and a refreshing swim in Lake Brownwood. But Flat Rock has been the site of many tragedies over the years. Several people have drowned in Lake Brownwood under very mysterious circumstances, some of which have been impeccable swimmers. And Bianca T., and that's not her real name, it was changed by the way, was almost one of them. And then this is a quote from the girl. This is what she told the reporter. "My family is big on camping, so we go to the lake pretty much every year. We have an RV and a ton of tents. We let cousins and aunts and uncles use. It was especially hot that weekend, so my cousin Tommy and I decided to go for a swim as soon as we woke up. I was about 13 at the time, but I had been part of a swim team since I was 10. My parents never worried about me and Tommy going to the lake on our own. We raced each other into the water, and I dived down to touch the bottom." And then the interviewer asked how deep was that area of the lake, and she shrugged. She didn't know. She said maybe about 6 feet, not deep, but definitely over our heads. "I rose to the surface and started splashing Tommy. He splashed back for a minute, and then stopped all of a sudden, looking intently at the water. 'What's the matter?' I asked him. 'I'm not sure,' he answered. 'I thought I just saw something strange in the water.' 'Well, don't try to frighten me by telling me it was a bull shark, because I know that's a load of crap,' I told him and laughed. He laughed too, and we started horsing around again. Bianca grinned. 5 minutes later, and I looked over at Tommy, and he is as pale as a sheet. I figured he wasn't done messing with me. Oh, what now? Something just grabbed my foot. I swam over to him. You know, I'm not as gullible as you think I am, but he didn't look like he was playing at all. I'm being totally serious. Something grabbed my..." And then she said, "But then it was me who was grabbed. It felt like a hand was wrapped around my ankle, and I was powerless to stop it from pulling me under. I turned my body inward, underwater, so I could see what or who had attacked me. Needless to say, I was shocked when I looked into the face of a girl who looked to be about my age. but you could instantly tell there was something supernatural about her. The reporter asked, "What do you mean?" "I mean that she was the palest person I'd ever seen, and her eyes were black. No pupils, no irises, just black. She smirked at me, and I think it was the first time I registered that I could die. I jerked forward in the water, and I remember striking her in the jaw. I did that over and over again until she let go of my ankle to retaliate. She probably would have still drowned me if Tommy hadn't swam to my rescue. He jabbed her in both of her evil-looking eyes and helped me to the surface. Our family still goes to Brownwood every year, but Tommy and me stay out of the water." So that is the article that is out of Brownwood, Texas. Now, when I first read that article, until I got to the point where they were talking about what the thing that grabbed them looked like, and saying that it was a girl with black eyes and everything, before that point, I thought, oh, this thing has got to be a Kappa. You know, honestly, that's got to be a Kappa. That's what I thought. The Kappa is a Japanese creature that lives in rivers and lakes, and it likes to drown people. And I'll go all into the lore of that a little bit later on in the show, because the Kappa has some amazing, fascinating lore that is really, really interesting stuff. So we'll get into that in the second half. But most likely what this thing was a vengeful spirit. I think that the headline got it right. A vengeful spirit is basically any ghost of someone that was alive and they were wronged in some way or another, and they are seeking revenge. I mean, it's pretty self-evident. It's kind of in the title. There's been a lot of examples of this throughout, all kinds of time. In certain cultures where funeral and burial and cremation ceremonies are like prized, are really important, they consider vengeful spirits to be unhappy ghosts who weren't given a proper funeral. So that's a possibility as well. That's more like back in the olden times, like of the Vikings and the Middle Ages, stuff like that, was when you would find that more. People do not place such a premium. They don't place such a premium on that anymore. Now, these vengeful spirits are a little bit different than your normal ghost. A normal ghost usually isn't going to hurt you. It's just kind of there. It's hanging out. Either it's kind of replaying through a moment in time over and over and over again, or it's something that you might even be able to interact with, but it doesn't really have the power to do much to you other than scare you. A vengeful ghost is a little bit different because they have the ability to inflict pain on you, and in extreme cases they can even kill you. The movie Poltergeist is a good example of a vengeful ghost. A ghost that can manipulate physical objects in our dimension, instead of just being trapped where they are and us just seeing an apparition, can actually interact with things on our plane. A vengeful ghost has that same ability to be able to touch us, to hit us, to hurt us, to move objects, to throw objects, all those kind of things. So that makes them extremely, extremely dangerous. Most times when you're dealing with a vengeful ghost, if you can figure out what it wants, if you can figure out what it's seeking, what kind of revenge it's looking for, how it was wronged, and somehow make that right, then lots of times they'll pass over. But in my opinion, the best thing to do is, if you run across a vengeful ghost in your life, just get the hell away from it. If you move into a new place and it's haunted by something that's throwing stuff at you and moving stuff around, just get the hell out of there. There's no point in trying to become Sherlock Holmes and figure out what the hell's wrong with this ghost and who hurt it in the past and all that. I mean, you're not a therapist, Just get the hell out of there. Because here's the problem. Ghosts aren't always what they seem. A lot of times, if you have a demonic presence that comes through, it will pretend to be a vengeful ghost. It'll pretend to be, most times, a child or a helpless woman that needs your help with something. And you're always taught by movies and popular culture that it's a good idea to find out what the ghost wants and help the ghost cross over. You know what I mean? But if you're not an expert in the paranormal, if you're not a person that does ghost investigations all the time and knows what the hell they're doing, and if you don't have a psychic medium with you, or you're not a psychic medium yourself that can really figure out what these things actually are that are messing with you, you got no business trying to do anything with the ghost. Just get the hell away from it. Like I said, demonic presences will pretend to be helpless children, helpless women that need your help. And then you go in as a good person with good intentions to try to help this ghost, that was wronged, and help them cross over. You think you're doing a noble thing, but what you're actually doing is falling right into the trap of the demon. You're doing exactly what the demon wants you to do. And the demon's going to use that to be able to take over your body, to be able to take over your mind, your soul. He's going to jack up your life in ways you can't even imagine. So, in my opinion, the good rule of thumb here is whenever you're dealing with any kind of thing like that, if you do not have the experience, just get the hell out of there. Stay away from it. That goes not only for ghosts, but it goes for all kinds of paranormal creatures, whatever the situation may be. From something that's run-of-the-mill like a haunting to something that is just completely out there like a Kappa that most of you have probably never even heard of before. Just stay the hell away from these things, because there are people in this world that study this stuff. There are people that do this for a living, and even those people sometimes lose. Those people end up dead. They come across something that is stronger than they are and that they can't stop. So if the experts can be defeated, if the experts can fail, what chance do you have as a novice? In the article, these kids did the right thing. They fought their way away, they got the hell out of there, and they don't go back in the water. That's smart, and that's what you guys should do if you ever run into stuff like this, is just don't mess around. Like the crocodile hunter used to say, don't muck with it. Just do not muck with it, because they can be very, very dangerous. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Kappa before I throw it over to Old Boy to get his thoughts, because the Kappa is a creature that is extremely fascinating to me. It comes from Japan. It's basically humanoid looking. You know what I mean? Like the shape of it. It has a head, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 feet, 2 hands. It's the shape of a person, but it's smaller. It's about the size of a child. And its skin is scaly like a reptile. It has reptilian skin. And it ranges in color from green to yellow to, in some cases, blue. And the Kappa inhabits ponds and rivers. The legend comes from Japan, but there's nothing really in the lore that says that it can only be in Japan. So it could potentially be other places as well. They have webbed hands and webbed feet, and people say that they smell like fish, and obviously they can swim very well because they live in rivers and lakes. They have a beak on them, but it's not like a bird's beak. But it's a sharp beak. They have like an armor plating almost over their scales on the back side. And the most interesting thing about their appearance, I think, is on top of their head, they have an indentation in the middle of the skull, and it's shaped almost like a bowl. And what they do is they live in the water. That's where they get their power from. So whenever they leave the water, because this creature doesn't have to be in the water all the time, it can leave the water as well and come up on land. And when it does so, it must have that little indentation full of water. That bowl on top of their head basically is full of water, and that's where the power comes from their river or their lake. So as long as that thing's full of water, they can survive out of their environment and up on land in the mountains, wherever they want to go. The lore talks about ways to potentially defeat the Kappa or to escape the Kappa. The lore says that they are extremely polite and honorable creatures. So if you introduce yourself to a Kappa, if you see one, heaven forbid, and you introduce yourself and you say, "Hi, my name is Old Boy," and you bow to it, then being a polite creature, it's going to bow back to you. And when it bows back to you, it'll spill the water out of its head, and it'll lose all its power, and it could potentially die then. Another way the lore talks about being able to escape a Kappa has to do with the Kappa's diet. Kappas are very, very fond of eating 2 things. Okay, they absolutely love eating guts and organs and intestines, entrails, that kind of thing. That's their favorite thing to eat. But their little wicked treat, their little guilty pleasure that they absolutely love also is something you would never expect, which is cucumbers. That's what the lore says. So if you have cucumbers with you, and a lot of times in Japan they would carry around cucumbers in the olden days with them just in case they ran across a Kappa. If you have cucumbers with you, you can make a deal with the Kappa and give him your cucumbers and he'll let you go because he can eat the cucumbers and he loves them. So that seems like a pretty easy way to get away if you happen to have a cucumber in your pocket. Other than that, there's really not much you can do to a Kappa. If you meet up with a Kappa in the water, like if this wouldn't have been a vengeful spirit in this article, and it would have been a Kappa like I first suspected before I got the full description, that would have been horrific for these kids. They would have died. You know, there's no way they would have got away. Because even though a Kappa is smaller, about the size of a child, like I said, they are insanely strong. And once they get a hold of you and pull you under, there's no way you're breaking that grip and getting away. It doesn't matter what you do. You know, you're not going to overpower one. So if you meet up with one in the water, you are definitely in a world of hurt. You are screwed big time. But if you meet up with one on land, then you have a shot. So that is the lore on the Kappa. It's a fascinating, fascinating creature. And I'm going to throw over to Old Boy now and see if he has anything to add on either subject.
On the Kappa, another thing like you were talking about, what I was reading about, is if you catch it in the act, you can get it to apologize to you. Like you said, is a very respectful animal. I don't know what's up with that. They're kind of like webbed, like you said, webbed hands, yellow, blue. I even read they could be orange too, or like a swampy green color. You know, you guys can just imagine. It looks like a frog creature, kind of with a beak. And that's why I'm kind of wondering, you remember, I hate to bring this up, remember that creature they found about 7 years ago? God, I forgot what it, remember the Murloc beast or whatever they found in New Jersey? You remember that story? They found a couple of them around that area. That Murloc place up in New Jersey, and it looked like that. So I'm wondering if that was a Kappa they actually found. It was dead. I remember that story. That's kind of weird. We brought that up. I was just thinking that maybe it's not just in Japan. It maybe that was just where it started, the lore. But you know, if it's in ponds and rivers, it could be anywhere. Yeah, I read a lot about them. Like they're very polite creatures, like he said, and if you bow, their stuff will come out of the head and they could die. But if you catch them in the act, like hurting somebody, you can make them apologize. It's real weird. It's a real twisted, weird story about them. They'll eat guts, cucumbers. If they are very strong, they look like a child, but big. They're about the size of a child, but they're very strong, supernatural strength. That's something people don't get. They're a very interesting creature. What I've read about them. God, they have so many names. The Yashi Yama, I forget. That's one of the names. I'm not going to get them right, but it has few names. But I know they also come after you for revenge. You know that, right? I read a little bit about them. They'll come after you for revenge over a couple things, for women, or they could be coming for revenge that you did them wrong. You know that. It isn't just they come after you. There's a reason they come after you, what I've read. And like he said, there is ways to get away if you have certain things, or they're going to eat you and eat inside of you. And they really like to eat intestines, kidneys, hearts, you know. Now, on the vengeful ghost thing, that's a very interesting story because, like the movie The Grudge, you know, that's a vengeful story. That's a vengeful ghost story. You know, that whole family were murdered in there and stuff like that. And she kept seeing that ghost, and it was a vengeful situation, just like he was talking earlier about. But most vengeful ghosts are spirits, and actually vengeful spirits come after you for revenge. And either it's like he said, it's they were either murdered, or either some of it is that they were a woman or a kid, and sometimes they get wrongfully, you know, something bad happens to them, like they were either murdered or something bad or they come after revenge at you because you did something wrong, and either you make it right or they'll keep coming at you, and or the vengeful ghost will keep coming to it gets out of their circulation of what it finds out. It makes it the situation right. Stairs of Echoes is another one. It's about a vengeful ghost that was murdered, and he ends up seeing these ghosts all the time. And you guys all know the story about that. And he actually the ghost was trying to tell him what had happened, but till he did that, the ghost did vengeful things. So I mean, there's plenty of stories about either or. The Kappa, I read a little bit about. It's a real interesting, Japanese. Really, that's like the thing about the Kappa. It's the most popular lore in Japan. It's also one of the most scariest things you can deal with because it's not. They call it a demon, but it's not a demon. That's just what they call in Japan they call it something different, like a creature is called a demon. That's what James was telling me earlier. So these are things you don't want to run into. I don't really think they're a spirit. I think they're more of some kind of creature, kind of like, I would say probably on the lines of like a leprechaun or fairies and stuff like that. But that's probably what I think the Kappa is. Now, vengeful ghost, that's a whole different story. It could either be a demon, it could be a ghost that was wrongly done, it could be anything. It could be something coming back for revenge, and it comes after whoever the person is there at the time who they want to take it out on. And see, like James says, a lot of people need to stop thinking they can solve all these ghost problems and vengeful, demons and vengeful spirits. Because sometimes you don't come back. White noise is a proven. That's about that. He gets killed by a ghost. The funny thing is in that movie with Frighteners with Michael J. Fox. You know what I'm talking about, James. That's kind of like that about vengeful ghost. Even though it was a comedy, it was about vengeful ghost, and it was about a ghost that kept killing people, and then the ghost that he killed would come back and kill him. But that still was more of a vengeful ghost story, even though it was a comedy. Not all horror movies some have comedy in it, but still they have a meaning to it. You should never mess with these things if you don't know what you're doing. And a lot of people think they see a couple ghost shows on TV or the internet and they can go out and do all this crap. I see it all the time. And some of these people get haunted, bad things happen to them, or they die. Even professionals, it happens to them. So, you looked at the people from The Conjuring, that family, you see what they had to deal with. It just happens to a lot of them, even professionals. And I believe you mess with that kind of lifestyle, paranormal, you're going to be visited the stuff you don't want to deal with and don't probably want to have in your life. So remember, when you're out looking for ghosts and stuff, that's fine and stuff like that. But remember, watch what you're really messing with, because sometimes you don't. I see a lot of people say, it was my aunt, my grandmother, or my dad, or my uncle. You don't know that's really them. A demon can know everything about your family. They can know anything. I mean, so can a ghost. They know stuff about you. Trust me on that. Not everything you think is what it seems. Remember that. Any of these things come and talk to you, don't always think it's your family member. Because that's the first thing, like the devil does. He doesn't want people to believe in him, so he made the whole world believe he doesn't exist. Well, what's the easiest way to get somebody to believe what you think or what you say? Is first thing you do is go after somebody they loved, a loved one, and pretend to be that person. That would be the easiest way to get people's trust. Because you think you're talking to your grandmother and you're really not. You're talking to a demon or a vengeful ghost that's pretending to be your sister that died, or your grandmother passed away, or your father, whoever. You know my point, a family member. So you got to watch what you mess with. Because take it from me, I've messed up a long time ago and was messing with things that I shouldn't have been messing with. And it took years, and it still does haunt me to this day. It's not something you want to deal with. It could have killed me. It could have killed my family. It went after people I loved. And it wasn't playing. So I'm just giving people fair warnings. When you mess with this kind of stuff, please don't do it. Unless you really know what you're doing, don't mess with these things. Don't go trying to look for a Kappa. unless you're with a bunch of people who are actually trying to see if it exists, like, you know, people who are experts on this. Don't go and try to find it yourself. Please. I mean, I don't think you're going to, but there's some people who just do asinine things and will do it anyway. It's like going and playing in a, you know, in a graveyard by yourself. Some people will do it. I wouldn't. Not by myself. Not during the night. I'm not stupid. I mean, some people, oh yeah, I'm scared. I'm not. It's not the point of being scared. It's just I'm not dumb. You know, I'm not going to do that. You don't know what comes home with you. You never do. You could bring something to your house and you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Especially if it's a shadow person or a demon. So I'll let Hershey go back and see what he thinks.
See, the thing that everybody knows that demons are evil. That's a given. But what people don't understand when you're dealing with a vengeful ghost, and let's say it is a true vengeful ghost and not a demon in disguise, okay? So let's just say that from the top so that there's no confusion. When you have a vengeful ghost, people are good, basically. Most people, okay? So when they see somebody in trouble or something like that, they want to help. And if you have a vengeful ghost, then in a way they almost feel like maybe that ghost is justified because it was done wrong. So they want to help that ghost seek justice. Because they've seen movies like The Crow and stuff like that, and they say, yeah, I want to help this ghost because they did him wrong, and I want to help him get justice and everything like that. Here's a couple things that people really need to think about and to understand about ghosts. First of all, a vengeful ghost is not here for any purpose that's good. Okay? Vengeance is based, you know, and revenge is based on anger and hatred, which are evil emotions. That is not coming from a good place, so you're already dealing with evil energy. You're not dealing with good energy. The overwhelming majority of your ghosts that are going to be out there, whether they're vengeful or not, any ghosts that you see, the overwhelming majority of them are not going to be good, positive forces. The reason is the good, positive forces aren't wandering the earth. Okay, they've passed on. They're in heaven or wherever it is, whatever's out there, where good people go, that's where they are. It seems that usually when you have something that stays behind, it's something that is evil most times. You know, it might be masquerading as something good, but most times it's something that's evil or something that is dealing with evil emotions such as anger or jealousy or hatred or something like that. That whole idea of like the movie Ghost, where you have the loving spouse that stays behind to watch after their loved one, you know, their wife or their husband or whatever, or, you know, the father that stays behind to look after their child. Those, you know, great good intentions, that just really doesn't happen very often. And the reason is because it takes a very powerful force to stay, you know, and usually that power comes from an evil energy, not a positive energy. Something I forgot to mention about the Kappa. A lot of times when we go through this lore on different creatures, you can really make that decision in your mind whether you believe that this creature is a real thing or whether you think that it's just a legend, that it's just imaginary and it's something that people made up. Slender Man was a prime example of that when we did a show on Slender Man. You know, there's no real sighting. I mean, there's a couple pictures, but there's nothing concrete that you can hold in your hand and say, hey, that's Slender Man. You know what I mean? For a long time, the Kappa was like that as well. But they have on display in Japan at a museum the mummified remains of a Kappa. Now, it's not the entire creature. It is one arm that has the hand attached, and it is something else. I don't know if it's part of a leg or what. It was hard to make out from the picture. But they actually have this on display in Japan, listed as the mummified remains of a Kappa. So if you wanted to spend the money, you could go to Japan and actually see it for yourself and see that this thing exists, that there it is. I will be putting that picture on the YouTube video for this show. Every one of these shows we do, we make a YouTube video for, we put on my YouTube channel, James Hershey Jr. You just type that into search and you can pull up all the old shows and watch them. I'm going to put that picture from the museum of the mummified remains of the Kappa. I'm going to put that in the YouTube video, and so even if you're listening to the show now on the radio, just go on back and check out the YouTube video to see that picture, because it really is a cool picture. And it's one of those things, like sometimes you see a picture of a Bigfoot and you're like, that's not a Bigfoot, that's a man in a rubber suit. Or you see, you know, a picture of this thing or that thing and you're like, that's not that, that's something else. This picture, when you look at it, you're like, oh man, that I don't know what the hell that is. That's crazy looking, you know what I mean? So definitely check it out and just judge for yourself and see what you think. I know that it is on display in Japan, in the museum, like I said, and in order for something to be displayed in a museum, it has to go through some sort of verification process by experts. So I would assume, now granted I don't know for sure, but I'm just assuming here, because it is in a museum, I'm assuming that it has been verified and checked out, and it's not something else that's being masqueraded as a Kappa. Okay? So if you happen to live in Japan, then, you know, go check it out and get on the Facebook page and leave us a comment if you've ever seen this thing in Japan or if you know anything about it. Pop over to the page, give it a like, and leave a comment if you know anything about this, because I'd really be interested. I haven't made it over to see it yet. I am going to go there, though, I think. I'm going to plan a trip, and I'm going to go over and I'm going to check this thing out for myself and see what it is. And, you know, because I've never seen it, I want to verify that it is actually something and not just, you know, a piece of foam rubber or something. But they do have it over there. So if you did want to look at it, then it is available for you. Okay, and a couple other things about the Kappa from lore, which I thought were kind of interesting. A lot of these creatures are just terrifying creatures. But we spoke earlier on how it was a very polite and respectful creature, and you could actually communicate with it. There's another side of this as well, because the Kappa is, to Japan, what Loki was to the Norse mythologies, okay? The Kappa is like the mischievous troublemaker. He's the trickster. He's the guy that, well, not guy, but the creature that pulls pranks. They go all the way from little innocent pranks, like looking up a woman's kimono or her dress, to very malevolent pranks like drowning people and kidnapping children, raping women, eating human flesh. So this thing, it can be playful and gentle and play little silly pranks and make you laugh, and you think, oh, this is a cool little thing. But it can also be deadly ass serious. So I just wanted to get that out there, because a lot of people will you know, look this thing up on the internet and they'll say, oh, well, look, it says here it's a prankster, and he's, you know, he's no worries, it's all good, he's just going to do a couple little pranks. Yeah, but sometimes those pranks can get very, very scary. You know, sometimes he's eating your guts. So just keep that in mind. In Japan, Kappas have actually been blamed for multiple drownings. It's on record that the cause of death was drowning by a Kappa. So that's pretty interesting as well, that they take it that seriously. They will drink your blood, they'll eat your liver, all that kind of stuff. They're just terrible. Another thing about them is the Buddhist monasteries, the monks in the monasteries, they so believe in these creatures that in many of the Buddhist monasteries, they've actually built statues in honor of the Kappa to show respect for it, so that it doesn't come to the monastery and cause any trouble or hurt anybody. It's seen as a way to try to protect the area, so that, you know, their monastery and the immediate area around it will be protected from the Kappa, so that they won't feed there or prey on any people that are living in that area, which is kind of cool. It's kind of really cool. They also believe that the Kappa, and this is something that's kind of strange to people that don't know Asian culture. It sounds like something out of Mortal Kombat or something. But the Kappa can actually feed not only on your guts and your flesh, but it can actually also feed on your soul as well. It does this by pulling the soul out of the body, and it manifests in like a ball, like a glowing ball of light, and it can actually pull this out of the body and feast on the soul and gain power that way as well. So not only do you have to worry about, you know, the Kappa eating you, which sucks, you know, that's a bad day for anyone, but you also have to worry about this thing possibly eating your soul, or at least a piece of your soul. I don't know exactly what the ramifications of that would be. I don't know if that's something that you could survive. You know, if it ate your whole soul, I don't think you could survive, but maybe if it just kind of pulled a little bit out and took a bite, I don't know. The Lord doesn't get into that. It doesn't talk about how much of the soul the thing eats, or if it eats all of it or just a piece, or it doesn't talk about if it's survivable, or what happens to you after that. Do you kind of just wander around like, you know, like somebody, like a sociopath with no conscience, no feelings, no empathy, but you're still alive? Or is the body really just a meat suit and the soul is who we really are? So by eating your soul, does it really consume your essence and you aren't there anymore, and the body just crumples to the ground, a useless husk? I don't know, because the Lord doesn't go into it. I could sit here and make something up and tell you something, but it's not going to be the truth. And I try to always tell you as much of the truth as possible. At least, you know, when you're talking paranormal and you're talking mythical creatures and stuff like that, sometimes it's hard to verify that what you're saying is the 100% truth, because you don't always know whether these creatures actually exist or not. You know what I mean? You know what the lore says, you know what reports say, you know what sightings have been, but you don't know for sure, unless you've seen it yourself, whether it's a real creature or whether it is, you know, just some kind of legend. So I try to be as true to the lore as possible, because I find that the lore and the mythologies, they tend to have the most pertinent information about a creature, what is widely accepted and believed by the native cultures of where that creature resides. I think that's the best way to handle these kind of things. So in a case such as this, when the lore doesn't really address what happens, then I don't think, I mean, it's always fun to speculate, but I don't think it's wise or good for me or anybody else to try to speak as an authority on something and say, no, this is what happens after it eats your soul, because nobody knows. You know what I mean? The lore doesn't talk about it. There's no credible sources that talk about it. There's very little lore actually even on the soul eating itself. If you look this thing up on the internet, I don't even think you're going to find the fact that it can eat your soul. You know, that comes from the old lore from Japan. So you know, that's what happens also in this field, is you'll have a lot of stuff on the internet about different creatures, but it just kind of scratches the surface of the actual lore on them. And in order to find all the stuff on a creature, you have to open some books. You got to really go into some of the old writings and check this stuff out. I have an advantage because I am a nerd. You know what I mean? I love books. That's what I do for a living. I write books. I love libraries. My entire childhood, while everybody else was out playing football and all that kind of stuff, I was in the library reading about these creatures. You know, I was cracking open books. I was finding rare books at old antique bookstores and stuff, and I was finding them and buying them and reading them and stuff like that. When we decided to do the show and include the Kappa in it, Old Boy messaged me and said, man, I can't find a picture of this thing anywhere to put on the video. And I said, oh, I got one here. And I was able to pop it to him right away, because I'm into these things. You know what I mean? That's why I know so much about a lot of these different creatures, is because I've been studying this stuff since I was a child. You know, pretty much from the time that I was able to read, I've been studying these creatures. So that is quite a many decades of research that I've been doing on these things. But even then, even after spending 35 years or more researching these things, even I don't know everything about them. You know, there's even creatures that I've never even heard of, some of them. So just keep that in mind when you're dealing with stuff in the paranormal. Not everything is known. Even on a creature like the Kappa, who is one of my favorites, actually. That's why I know so much about them, because I've studied them for years and years and years. But even on a creature like this, where it's one of the most popular, like Old Boy said, in Japan, and I know a bunch about it. I've studied the lore on this, like the real lore, not the really quick Wikipedia internet lore, but like the real lore. But I guarantee you there's stuff about the Kappa that I don't know. I guarantee you there's stuff about the Kappa that nobody knows. You know, and if you actually ran into one of these things, it might do something that catches you completely and totally by surprise. And you'll be like, oh my God, that wasn't in the lore. I've never seen that before anywhere. Nobody told me about this. And I think that not only applies to the Kappa, I think it applies to everything in the paranormal. Because you have to remember, when you're dealing with the paranormal, you're dealing with things that are not normal. You know, that's right in the title, paranormal. It's obvious. These things we don't understand completely. None of us. Even experts. You know what I mean? And I talk to a lot of experts. You know, I am an expert in some fields. And I have been on shows with and talked to some of the best experts in the world in a lot of these different subjects. They'll even admit to you that they don't know everything about it. You know, that there's just so much that's unknown that we don't understand yet. You know, that's why we do this every day. This is why we work so hard, is because we're trying to understand these things. But I don't think any human being on earth understands these things completely. So that's why we always try, when we talk about these subjects, we always try to give you that warning of, please, if you're not an expert in this field, if you don't know what the hell you're doing, don't mess around. And I know that gets repetitive sometimes to hear that every show, and I know people sometimes are like, I'm going to do what I want, you can't tell me. Whatever, man. If you guys want to go out and do ghost hunting or whatever, God bless you. It's great. Welcome to the field. I hope everybody is interested in this kind of stuff and does it. That's wonderful. All I'm asking is please get some training, man. Find somebody who's an expert and hook up with them and learn some stuff. Just be careful. That's all we're saying. Because even the experts don't know everything. So just keep that in mind. We've got about, 14 minutes left of the show. Old boy, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Actually, I do. The weird thing about the Kappa is they also like to rape women. And they like to watch them, like they used to bathe in the river. And they would either, like he said, be a trickster, look up their komodos, or they'll do violence on women. And because a lot of women, people got to realize in Japan in the 18 and the 17 centuries, they took baths in ponds and lakes. So they would watch them because basically they're like Pan, but the Greek Pan, God Pan, you know what I'm talking about, James. They're basically the Japanese version of them, but they're just more morbid. They'll eat you and eat your guts. And I really believe there's where Tolkien got Gollum from, because Gollum's pretty much close, other than the beak part, is pretty much close to one of those creatures, because it says it could be an imp. They say it's a river imp or a spirit. Like I said, I don't know. This is other than like once or twice. I have forgot about this creature. I've heard of it before, but it was very interesting to read about this. I don't have books like James has. I just read everything I could on the internet about it. Vengeful Ghost, I know a lot about because I've dealt with that. Like he was saying, they're not demons all the time. It could just be evil or some kind of wrongdoing, like a fingerprint. That's what The Grudge was basically about. Like a bad fingerprint of something bad that's happened and just keeps repeating itself. And you just don't mess with it. But get back to the Kappa, yeah, it likes to do stuff. It's more like a trickster, but it's a bad trickster. And the pictures I have seen, it has like a turtle shell and a beak. It's a real ugly looking creature. I don't know. Have you seen those pictures, James?
Oh yeah, I've seen a couple different pictures of it. And the weird thing about the Kappa, bro, is that it looks almost like a cross between Gollum and a lizard man, dinosaur looking thing. You know what I mean? It's really reptilian looking and scaly. But I've actually seen in some of the old books, I've seen pictures of this thing where it didn't even have the scales. It was hairy. So apparently they come in different ways. They don't always have to be scaly. Sometimes they can have hair on them. Sometimes they can be hairless, like Gollum was. That's actually a very good point, because Gollum is a good representation of what one of the hairy ones look like without the hair. Right? Like if you took the hair off one of the hairy Kappas, it would look like Gollum. It would look a lot like Gollum. So that's a very, very astute point. I didn't even think about Gollum. But yeah, that is exactly what they look like. But they just have a lot of hair on them, the ones that aren't scaly.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think that's probably where he got Gollum from, if you think about it. Because Gollum was trying to eat Bilbo in the store with the riddles, remember? And that was what the deal was. So Gollum ended up being kind of like that, but remember, he was a regular hobbit, but he turned into basically a a monster because of that, greed, and he murdered over the ring, and the ring basically turned him into that kind of like a monster like that, like a skelly, fishy eating looking creature, just crazy looking, skelly, ugly, hairy, kind of like a frog creature. It's just weird. It was just a weird story, but I think that's probably where he got it from, because he was a really smart man anyway, Token. So he probably got that story from there. That I wouldn't be surprised about that at all. That's a good thing to think about. That's a new theory that he could have probably got that from that story. What do you think?
Well, I think so. I mean, I agree, and it's interesting to me because I'm a huge Tolkien fan, and it never occurred to me to put those two together. I mean, I love J.R.R. Tolkien. I love the Hobbit series, Lord of the Rings, all of it, and I also love Kappas. I love this lore, and when I really compare the two and think about it, they match up almost perfectly. Because remember when they found Gollum in the movie? When he walked up on Gollum, where was he? He was at the stream. That's exactly the habitat that a Kappa would live in. Now, we didn't see the indentation on the head like a Kappa would have, but he had that hair, so it's hard to tell. Or maybe Tolkien just left the indentation out because he didn't think it looked cool. Of course he wrote it in a book. He didn't make the movies, but you know what I mean. Maybe when they made the movies, they thought, well, this doesn't look very cool with a big indentation in the head, so let's leave that out. But it's kind of interesting to me because I never thought to compare those two, but now that I do, I mean, yeah, that matches up perfectly. I mean, there's a very good possibility that Gollum was based on the old legends and lore of the Kappa.
Well, if that's true, that was pretty cool of him to do that, but I kind of figured that out. See, there is a reason why I'm on this show, because I figure out things. I might not be as detailed as James, because he's a genius. I'm not.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. We're coming near the end of the show, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to close the show with another pretty interesting story that has to do with the song I'm going to play at the end tonight. But before I do that, let me get out the shameless plugs, the links, all that kind of stuff. The YouTube channel is youtube.com/James Hershey Jr. The website for our merch is treespring.com/staring into the abyss. On that site, you can find t-shirts, you can find sweatshirts, leggings for women, cell phone cases, posters, blah, 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 just a ton of different stuff. So if you like the show and you'd like to have some merch, that's where you can get it. The prices are fairly reasonable, and it's pretty good quality stuff, so I think that you'll really like it. That's treespring.com/James Hershey Jr. I make my living as a horror author, so for once I'm going to give myself a plug as well. Please check out my novels. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them Books A Million, Walmart, all those different websites. Not a lot of stores carry a whole lot of books anymore. You might have like the biggest name people, you'll have a few of their books, but there's not a whole lot of bookstores that are carrying a ton other than maybe a Books A Million or something like that. But my book is on all the websites. It's on Books A Million's website, Walmart's website, Barnes & Noble, all of those. And in some stores, you can also get it as well. It's up to the individual markets whether they carry it or not. But please check out my novels. It's I Am Legion, The Surrogate of Souls, The Rise of the Revenant. That's the I Am Legion series, the trilogy. And then I have another novel called Call of the Wind Spirits, which is a pretty good one. So please give those a read and let me know what you guys think. People seem to really, really like them. I've done really well with them. So I'll give myself a shameless plug today, because I never do. Now, about the song that I'm going to be playing tonight. This song is called This Little Man, and it is based on somebody from my area. This is a kid, and when I say kid, he was a kid. He was under 10 years old. He was a little guy that got brain cancer. And I don't know about you, but if I got brain cancer, I think it would really suck. You know, I can't tell you that I'd be a happy-go-lucky, smiling guy. I would be pretty angry. I'd be pretty depressed. It would suck. Now, I'm pretty confident that when I die, I know where I'm going. So I'm at peace with death. Death doesn't scare me. It's the idea of leaving behind all the people that I love. I play the role of not only a caregiver, I guess you would say, because I take care of everybody in my life, but also I play the role of protector. I'm there to make sure that my family is okay, that the people I love are protected, that if somebody comes into this home or anything comes after my family, I can destroy it. I can make sure that they're safe. The thing that would mess with me about dying, that would have me all upset, is not the idea of death, because I'm not worried about that. It's the idea of leaving behind the people I love and leaving them behind unprotected. Because, I mean, financially they'll be taken care of. In a lot of ways they'll be taken care of, but they won't have me there anymore to protect them. And that's the only thing that would really scare me or bother me about the idea of dying. But I can't say I'd be happy. But this kid was unbelievable, man. I've never in my life seen somebody go through what he went through. And to do it with such courage and such grace. I mean, that's the only way I can really put it. Just God-given grace. Because that kid, it's like nothing could faze him. Now, I'm sure he had his moments. But from everything I saw and everything that everybody I know saw of this child, he always had a smile on his face. He always was hopeful for tomorrow. He sees the day, you know, carpe diem. Everybody's heard that. He really lived that. And he taught me a lot about how to live. And it's funny that somebody that died, you know, a child, taught a grown man how to live better. But it's true, he really did. He was an amazing, amazing human being. And I really believe, even though his life was short, I believe that, one, he was absolutely here for a reason. Because he changed a lot of people's lives. And he changed a lot of people's lives for the better. I'm a better person because he was here. I'm a better person because I was able to watch the example that he set when dealing with a level of adversity and pain and suffering that I can't even imagine. This child blew me away. His name was Trent Williams, and he died of brain cancer when he was a little guy. But he absolutely made a difference in a lot of people's lives, including mine. So this song is dedicated and was written for Trent Williams, and I would like to dedicate this show to him and to his memory, and to everybody who loved him, whether you're family or whether you were just somebody like me who just followed his story and was in the same town and got, you know, was around but wasn't family, and it just changed you. I'd like to dedicate it to all of you guys as well. He may be gone, but believe me, he lives on in each and every one of us that knew him, and each and every one of us that followed his story, because he made a difference. And you can't ask for much more than that in life. So I hope you guys enjoy the song. Here is This Little Man. And until I speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.
You may be faced with problems, you may be hurting. Just smile through the pain and dance in the rain. Sometimes the storm gets stronger and the wind may blow you over, but one thing remains: God will never change. Sometimes we don't always understand, but we just gotta trust it's in His hands. God help us have the strength like this little man. Help us fight it doesn't mean that it won't rain. 'Cause in my heart I know you had a plan for this little man. Because every day he struggled, but his faith was never troubled. A shirt can't explain, never heard of it pain. His smile was always shining, even when he was unwinding. And one thing remained, he danced in the rain. And I know you don't understand, but in my heart I know God had a plan. God help us have the strength like this little man, and help us fight the battles that I know we can. When we call on Jesus' name, it doesn't mean that it won't rain. 'Cause in my heart I know you had a plan for this little man. I know he walks with Jesus, I know there's finally peacefulness, but through the pain he smiled. If we could all be like this child, God help us have the strength like this little man. Help us fight the battles that I know we can. When we call on Jesus' name, it doesn't mean that it won't rain. 'Cause in my heart I know you had a plan for this little man. When we call on Jesus' name, it doesn't mean that it won't rain. 'Cause in my heart I know you had a plan for this little man. So smile.